Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Music with me, Graham Cove, straight from the dentist's chair, where I've had my mouth polished to within an inch of my soul. So I've just got a glass of water, so I can remove from it what can only be described as the wonderful taste of detergent around my mouth. I'll be speaking to Kyle about dentists and music and everything else that keeps us all awake at night. Straight after this.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. How are you, sir? Happy 2025, by the way, as well.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I'm doing really well. Staying busy.
Cool. Are New Year's big things for you, or is it just like another day for you? Or
I mean, it's I'm pretty traditional American, so any excuse we can have to get together with friends and family and maybe toss back a couple and catch up, eat some rich foods. We definitely do that. So I wouldn't say I'm like a big New Year's person. I don't really go out and hit the clubs like I used to. If I'm not playing somewhere, I'm usually just going to a friend's house. And like this year, I went to my friend's house who lives on the river, and we just like launched fireworks. So it was pretty cool.
That's definitely more than we did here. It seems to me that New Year's doesn't seem to have the same kind of appeal that it did years ago for me. But whether that's just because I'm getting old now, and
No, I don't think so. I think we're all dreading the next year because it's been a rough 5 years. Rough 10 years really.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I can remember sort of. When I was younger, definitely sort of, parties in in and around London around New Year's that went on for, well, pretty much for days.
Yeah, and in America, everyone used to watch the ball drop in New York, and if they weren't in New York, they were watching it on TV, but no one really watches mainstream TV anymore, so that's kind of a thing of the past now,
All by the by, yeah.
Right.
I still do watch Jules Holland though, for a few moments heading up to the change into the new year.
Cool.
And I always enjoy the Scottish pipers piping us into the new year. I think that's a great thing to do. I think even sort of like Burns Night here, which will happen shortly, of course, is probably gained momentum over New Year's. But enough of that. Tell us a little bit about you, sir. So, when did you first start making music?
My dad's a really fantastic bass player from the Southeast United States, and so it's always kind of been in my blood. I used to get in trouble at school for tapping pencils on the desk and just like keeping the rhythm all the time.
I love it.
Teachers like slap my hand, tell me to quit piddling. But I guess professionally, 15 to 20 years ago, I've been in many bands. I've toured all over, I guess, the world now. The Pearl Poet thing's pretty new though. We haven't even released a debut LP. We did one EP in 2022, so this is like a new project for sure.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Where did the name Pearl Poet come from?
Pearl Poet's actually a anonymous medieval writer who wrote
Really?
Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, as well as two famous poems called Pearl and Cleanness. So it's like in the King Arthur canon, so it's legendary stuff. But it was always very appealing to me that person was anonymous. So I thought that would be a cool moniker for a band to take on the name of like an anonymous poet,
Yeah. So with that, then, are you thinking that you need to write the history of this?
I don't know. I guess that would depend on how far out we get. If we get
It could
into
be quite cool though, couldn't it? I mean, I
yeah,
could.
like we get into like some rock opera territory, with that kind of thing, like Alan Parsons with Edgar Allan Poe, or like, the Who, Tommy, or Quadrophenia, something like that. It would have to be. It would have to be something like that, and I would have to be really far out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's.
I just thought even like, if you were writing sort of liner notes for an album, if you put an album together or whatever, if you went, okay, well, this started over here, and you had like geographic places where people needed to go to get the lineage of this, and they kind of followed ley lines, and
That would be cool.
You mentioned sort of King Arthur. Obviously, we've got Glastonbury down the road from here, where loads of people go because it sits on a ley line, and King Arthur is apparently there, and I just think, you could almost write this mock history, given the fact that it's an anonymous poem, that kind of goes with it.
That's actually really a good idea. I just kind of thought, we were carrying on that spirit and that vibe, but that's pretty interesting. Liner notes. I wish kids, picked up records and analyzed the art and read everything in it. And, but it wasn't long ago, I handed Quadrophenia by the Who to one of my friends, and like, I was like, hey, read that essay by Pete Townsend in there, and he like takes a look at it, and the sucker's huge. I mean, to be fair, it's all tiny words like that. And he never read it, so it's kind of like, it's Pearl Poet's also an attempt to sort of get people interested in the idea of literature, poetry. I feel like it's unfortunately a bit of a dying art, at least for now. I mean, it's not that people don't read, but they're sort of caught up in these sort of, and I'm not putting any sort of hate on this style of writing or whatever, but people are into Harry Potter and this, sort of Game of Thrones, and these sort of like series of books, and they're just sort of almost like soap opera television, but and a lot of these, of course, have been turned into films and soap opera TV shows like Game of Thrones, but they're into these sort of episodic things, which I dig that, but it seems like, I mean, for me, literature sort of peaked out in the mid 20th century, as far as like, I feel like that was the last time really excellent books were being put out, maybe up to the early 80s, but it just sort of, I guess the art form sort of started to die off in the computer age.
I'm sure there'd be people that would disagree with you, who are writing really good stuff. It's a bit like music, isn't it? I mean,
it is, and that's the thing. It's like the saturation. It's like, if you don't have, and like no one wants to sign record deals now because they're all bad, and we realize we don't need the record companies. But on the other hand, like, you need tens of millions of dollars to properly advertise. If you really want to be a household name, like back in the day, the record company was like a bunch of businessmen that would like, sort of like the movie industry, like it was sort of like rolling the dice, and they could make money on like rogues and these just sort of bands that were naturally doing creative things that they weren't being told what to do, what to say. And, now it's just not about that. It's pretty much a propaganda business. Even if you don't see it that way, the mainstream, I think film and music is just a machine now, and we're like a needle in a haystack, so that's the real big challenge. But
it's fun. It's a problem, but it's also fun for people as well, in a way.
It is. I mean, it's exciting because you can do whatever you want to do, and you could go viral. But you're still facing, like, even if you're a mainstream artist, like I heard my friend talking about this, and I was like, wow, that blew my mind. But like, okay, so Taylor Swift, she never really stayed, like, she's like the biggest artist in the United States. It's not really my kind of thing, but I just like heard the story and it blew me away. And she like apparently will get, number one right away anytime she releases anything in the United States, probably UK too. I don't know. But she goes huge all over the world, but she only stays on the charts in the US for like maybe a week or two, and then it drops off. It's not like it used to be where like you had an awesome song and it could stay on the charts for months, if not years, like Michael Jackson or whoever, you know. People like don't really have that attention span anymore. They're just on to the next thing, even if it's
yeah, I mean, we've just had Christmas, haven't we? I mean, that's probably the best example of that. Every time it comes around at Christmas, so we've just had, you know, Wham's Last Christmas back at number one again. In the UK charts, you know, for consecutive years, and it's like basically, if you're a you know, a new artist releasing something at Christmas time, well, you might as well forget it, because all of those traditional Christmas songs are going to suddenly back into the charts. I mean, we've even got, I don't know whether you have it there, but we now have Christmas stations here, commercial Christmas stations that literally from about, I'm gonna say sort of October time, start playing just Christmas songs.
We have those here on satellite radio, but also just like on people that still tune into the local. I haven't listened to local radio in years, but like the people that still can like pick up stations, like local stations, they play all Christmas, you know, starting in the fall, like the autumn, you know. So yeah, I hear you on that, and that's a good song by Wham. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you're not already sort of grandfathered into the industry like all these people, I feel like it sort of, the cutoff time was like early 2000s. And if you weren't, so if you haven't been around for 20 years, it's really hard to sort of navigate and make money in this industry. You know,
it's kind of at the time when sort of physical product was at a saturation point, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I guess. And then there was the massive decline as streaming came in. And if you're still remembered from sort of physical product times,
that's exactly right.
Then that's you're just going to keep coming round and coming round and coming round again.
Right.
Probably partly due to the fact that everybody can pick up your music in all shapes and forms, even including going to the charity shop and picking up your CD for 20p.
Right.
Sold to, it'd be fascinating actually, wouldn't it, to put a tag on a thing like a CD, wouldn't it, and just see how many pairs of hands it actually gets through these days, by the time it actually hits the grave. Wouldn't
that back in the day of like tapes and CDs and vinyls? Oh yeah.
I mean, having said that, last year was, interestingly enough, not only did we see again a rise in physical product sales, which was great, but we actually saw sort of the halt of decline in CD sales last year, which were for the first time. So, you never know. The tide may be turning. Maybe people are going to go back to physical. I've said it on here before, but I do wonder whether the more that we push towards technology, the more some humans might revolt against that.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like there's definitely like nostalgia wave, retro wave, like all these different, like, you know, I think vinyls come in and they come out, and like they're you know, the 2009, 2010 era, like tapes were kind of popular for a little while. They come in and out, but I think the real problem is convenience. And that's the problem with the movie industry too. Like people going out actually to the theater. I don't mean like Hollywood. Of course, it's almost dead too. But like people like the theater industry, people don't really go out and see movies as much anymore. Obviously, stream them from home. It's convenient. And that's the issue with music too. You know, it's like even with having a vinyl, you got to take it out. It's an experience. You got to flip it. You got to, you know, you have the booklet. You know, you take it out. It's supposed to be an experience. You know. Especially these psychedelic records that we listen to all the time. Like, but that's why I think there has to be some sort of new interface. Like, I thought it was going to be like VR goggles, and then we could like create our own world, like for the record. So, you know, almost like if we made a concept record like Sgt. Pepper's or Pet Sounds or something like that, like, but each song could have its own, you could call it a music video or a vibe or map or whatever, like its own world that you could live in and be in while the song was playing. I was like, well, that's going to be the new thing with VR, but we're just not quite there. Every time I think VR or even 3D is going to be a thing. Like people just aren't really ready for it. You know, we don't even, 4K is not even really even the standard yet, and it's been around for years. We're still on 1080p on Instagram and YouTube, and you know.
I suppose that's one of the reasons why so many musicians are focusing on the live experience as well.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
it's the element where, to some extent, there's that element of control still. You know, or people have made a choice to go and see you. When I say that, it's not that people haven't made a choice if they've listened to you on streaming or whatever, but so often when you speak to people, and this is part feeds into what you were saying about poetry and literature, etc. as well. Do you feel like people have lost touch with how to listen?
I do. I think I don't know a lot of people that sit down and just listen to a record like, I don't know, Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, or Coltrane, A Love Supreme, like from start to finish. Maybe they smoke a joint, whatever, and just like listen to it from start to finish. Like, I don't know, like just the most hardcore music fans or like the best, some of the best musicians I know do that, you know, but I don't think the masses in anywhere, you know. I do see, based upon just taste in music, I do see that Europe is a lot more open-minded to the kind of music that we do. Most of our streams are from like Europe and Australia, and you know, in the United States, everybody's.
Do you know where in Europe as well? Do you have you got the granular? Well,
oh yeah,
you have.
Yeah, like Amsterdam, Germany, like Berlin.
Cool.
You know, Amsterdam. Those are like a couple of our top two that I like. Also in like Brazil, South America, of course. They're really open. You know, South Americans are really into this kind of stuff, psychedelic, anything dancey, you know, anything that has a dance beat. So yeah, you know, UK is probably about like third or fourth on our stream. So just in general, UK. So we always do, when we advertise, you know, we always do ads in London. And so
I definitely feel like we've maintained probably quite a good core sort of group of music fans in the UK who are really passionate about music and do want to listen. But that's interesting. You've got fans in those other countries as well. Does that make you want to visit those countries when you see those demographics coming through?
No, I pretty much just want to go to those countries, you know. I've toured the US like in a lot of bands, you know, over the years, my bands and other people's bands, and you know, it's cool and it's fun, but I've done it a lot more than I've been around the earth, and I've never toured Europe before. So
right.
So I think if you really want to sell physicals and stuff like that, that's the way to go. If you're an indie artist, like go where your fans are, you know?
Yeah.
I think our shows are really electrifying and sort of over the top, psychedelic, but they're filled with sort of heartfelt songs. So I think, I don't know, the American music industry now seems to be mostly hip hop and country, or country hip hop.
That narrows it down, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I'm not really into it, but I mean, I love country western, like old stuff, like Willie Nelson. I mean, I love Redheaded Stranger. It's a great record. And I love Johnny Cash and all that kind of stuff, you know, Chris Christopherson, all the great stuff. But, you know, it's gotten far, far, far away from that. You know?
It definitely sounds like that needs to be done, that you need to almost do some kind of road trip where you sort of build in all of the places where I'd love to know if anyone else has actually done this. If you know what your demographics are for listeners in terms of your music, has anyone done that where they've then kind of built things, culturally relevant things to do with the places where people are listening, into the music stroke, or into the, you know, what gets put out in terms of artwork or whatever, so that it almost feels like you're bringing that community together? That would be so good.
That is cool. And a couple people have done that. I mean, in a little bit more of an abstract way than what you're talking about. But like, you look at Beach Boys Holland, you know, they went over to Holland and made that record. And obviously the art and a couple of the songs were inspired by that experience. And then Paul McCartney was at Band on the Run that he recorded in you know, Africa. And, you know, some of the songs have those tribal beats. And, you know, even though he almost got killed there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Paul Simon did it a bit.
Graceland, etc.
Right.
Yeah, Rhythm of the Saints, very good. Yeah,
Rhythm of the Saints, exactly. So yeah, I think that would be intelligent for artists to do, as far as, you know, if they're thinking business minded and creative. I mean, I think anywhere you go, you're going to be inspired. If you stay somewhere, if you're making a record somewhere, you know, like you go somewhere tropical or wherever, you're going to be inspired by the natural beauty of the place and the people. And that's one thing I love to do, is like sort of people watch. You know, I'm not really a big drinker, but I'll go to like local bars wherever I'm at and just sort of watch the people. And I think it really helps as a writer, you know.
I love people watching.
Yeah.
You say bars are a great place. I think one of the underrated places to go is a British service station.
Oh,
so
yeah.
So when you when you get over here, you need to check out British service stations. If you think about it, they're great because you have a time limit as well. You can only park in a British service station for 2 hours, which means that everybody that stops at a service station is transient.
Right.
That's what I really love about that. And they're all coming and going to different places. I actually wrote a sort of beta script for a sort of comedy soap opera type thing called Services at one point.
Nice.
and what I thought was so great about it was that I could just, you know, in soap operas, you have to sort of build up bringing somebody in, and then you have to find a way of getting rid of them.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
It's all made for you there because people are going to come and go anyway.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't seem unreasonable that suddenly, you know, like somebody that's got absolutely nothing to do with anything else that's been going on suddenly arrives at this service station. It's completely plausible.
Right. The whole thing could just be like almost like stand-up skits, like brand new each time, because it's different people every time.
Exactly.
It's not get the same like cash register or whatever. You know, the person running the cash register, they could be the reoccurring characters. You know, maybe once in a while.
but also, you know, you could literally have someone that's, you know, the Marquis of, you know, of a particular county town in England standing next to somebody that's homeless at a service station. It's perfectly plausible having a conversation because, you know, these things happen, and that I like that. There didn't seem to be any kind of class divide or you know, need for it to meet sort of social norms, because it's kind of a microcosm society, and I quite
Great. I'm gonna have to check out your service stations. I'm a big fan of the service stations in Japan. They're all 7-Elevens, but they have legitimate sushi. I mean, like, you know, most of the time you think like, no way, I'm not going to eat sushi from a gas station, you know, or convenience store or service station, whatever you call them. But you know, they're really legit in Japan.
Well, we have a number of service stations here which are run by big corporations, and then and some of which are French, and then we have, as a revolt to that, and that if you ever come over, I'll give you a map of where to go, and then we have a group that was started by basically sort of an independent group. And they're all based around farms, and they were built on farmland, and they sell local produce.
Oh, that's great.
Right. And it's home cooked. It's kind of like decent home cooked food and farm shop type food. And, you know, with
There's
nice
a
spaces.
big movement, in America to sort of get back to that. We have farmers markets, people buying and drinking raw milk, getting tough and, buying fruits and vegetables, trading, buying, I buy local honey, it's like 2 or 3 miles from my house. Just go into this lady's driveway and she has all these bee boxes. It's sort of like an honor system. You get what you want and you recycle the bottles, and you just like pay her on like an app, like with Venmo or Cash App or whatever. And I mean, she's got cameras, of course, nobody steals from her. The whole community just gets that honey. It's great because it's local. So it really helps with your allergies,
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great if you could get back to that, Carl? You could literally sort of like go, look, I'll give you a CD and I'll have half a dozen of your best venison.
That would be amazing. But we're back again to like people, there's not value in songs to people anymore, except for people like us who are going to go out and pay $50 for the new, half master of the Who record or whatever it is, there's the masses just kind of like, one of my buddies is, said people kind of like music's like background to them. It's like something happened in the background. The same way like people don't really have the focus. And I'm just saying, I know that I'm being general with this, but a lot of people, they don't have the focus to sit and watch a movie from start to finish without like talking or pausing it and looking at their phone, whatever. I mean, we all have that issue now. We're all like, oh man, what am I doing? I missed that part. I was looking at my phone, but because we're dealing with that, we're back to the whole, like the people really listen the way they used to.
Yeah.
Do
you think though, do you think that like the whole COVID period, did it make any dent in that at all? I mean, obviously we didn't have a lot of live music. A lot of live music was cancelled for a long time. Do you think it made anybody sit up and realize, well, hang on a minute, what if, I mean, everybody else strikes, right? Imagine if suddenly all creatives went on strike. We're not producing anything anymore. That's it.
People's lives would suck, but they don't, you sort of, you don't really know what you have until it's gone, so
yeah.
They're not putting the value in it. Like when my parents were growing up, it was like a big deal. Like, they were part of the later boomer generation. So I think they were graduating high school around the mid 70s, something around that time. But, so they weren't even really like the real hippies, but they would, like my dad told me it was like a big deal when like the new song by whoever, Boston or Chicago or whoever they were listening to, Doobie Brothers, Leonard Skinner, whatever, when like the new song by these bands or the new record, it was like an event, even Michael Jackson Thriller, he was like, man, there was lines out the door to get that LP, he was like, it was an event. It was like people were really they really listened to music. They were very much into, sort of building and customizing their own stereos. And all the audiophiles, all the big music fans I know do the same thing. They're buying vintage gear. They're buying, really nice turntables and stuff like that. And so I definitely think there's a lot of us that do listen to music that way.
Yeah, I do think that the sort of downfall of the charts into where it is now, when it started including streaming, I do think that's got a lot to do with it, because if you look at how things work on social media, if you look at how things work online, what we do know is that people still love gamification. We all love a game.
Yeah.
Right. We all love, sort of challenging ourselves and challenging ourselves, or seeing how we score against other people. And back in the day, this is how it was. You see, back in the day, you used to go to your record store of choice, folks, and you'd line up and you'd buy a piece of vinyl, and you'd go, I'm going to get my favorite band to number one this week, right? And your friend would be like, oh, they're rubbish. I'm going to get my favorite band to number one. And it became quite competitive, and you loved it. You see, nowadays you've got no control over it. Nobody knows. Nobody can actually physically control that, because it's all just out there. And the only thing that's controlling whether it gets up there or whatever is money being pushed into major airplay, so that and that's it. That's it. There's no way you can physically get involved in making something go to the top of the charts. I mean, it was always there to a certain extent that radio airplay was kind of a little bit brought by people pluggers going in and plugging to DJs and whatever, but stuff still got through. People could go out, support an independent band and go, right, we're getting this to number one, but it doesn't
like Paul's, like the Beach Boys actually, this is how they got signed to Capitol Records. They got into it. They made a song and got into a contest with like 3 other bands, and it was like call in, and whoever gets the most calls. So they just had like all their friends and families call over and over and over. They won the contest. Their song got on the radio, and then their dad took them to Capitol Records and got them signed. So
not that they didn't deserve it.
No, they definitely deserved it. They're hardworking men for sure. But like you're right. You could sneak things through. People were still sort of, there's no social media. It wasn't sort of easy to like tune people out or block people or ignore people. People like had personal relationships. So they'd be like, oh, hey, Graham, I got some buddies that made this record. It's really cool. Would you mind spinning it? And they were like, hey, sure, buddy. And you could get things through. You could get things on the, rock stars have been made that way,
Yeah.
Especially like late 50s, mid to late 50s era, like Buddy Holly and, what's the other kid that died with him? Richie Valens. And, they're like, it's in their movies, it's in their biographies. These people really did, like, disc jockeys really helped these people become famous,
Yeah. Well, that's the only other 2 ways that people can become famous these days, which is to get someone that's famous to cover your song. Or get it in a movie.
Yeah, sync licensing, I think, is where the money's at now. Aside from touring, but to tour, you can tour with a new project to gain a huge fan base, and then when you get a huge fan base, then you can make money touring.
Yeah,
But I think sync licensing is where a lot of people are trying to turn to, and it's not something that's easy anymore. I mean, it's getting pretty saturated. We're into it. I was lucky enough to have a band back in 2012 do some sync licensing for, I think it was MTV. The show was on, but now and like back then, I felt like it was just sort of like a new thing. Now it's so saturated. Like once we tried to get back into it for the Pearl Poet project, we're like, wow, man, there's so many people running scams, and there's just businesses created around scamming artists on this, sync licensing stuff. So you really have to sort of stalk these music supervisors for the different, production companies. If you say, hey, well, I want to put my song in a Ferrari commercial, you really got to stalk these people, find out who they are, and contact them on social media or whatever,
Okay, look, let's give you a helping hand up, all right, at this stage. All right, without it being crass at all. Is there if we pick something that you might be working on, right, as Pearl Poet, obviously some of your music, lends itself to having a vocal on there, maybe even a guest vocal as well. Pick a guest vocalist that's actually made it at the moment that actually you would have on a Pearl Poet project.
A guest vocalist that's made it. Wow. That's tough. I would go with it's actually someone I know and respect a lot, but maybe Luke Steele from Empire of the Sun.
Cool.
Female wise, oh man, that's tough. Maybe. Wow. I really don't listen to new music. It's like kind of shuts off after the 80s for me. Let me think. Maybe Casey Musgraves.
Casey Musgraves.
Or maybe this is a tough one.
I'm writing these down, by the way, because what we'll do is we'll tag them in, and you never know.
Right,
You never know.
Probably Lana Del Rey.
Right. Do you know what? That name comes up quite a lot.
I think she's a bit of a chameleon. I think she could pull off something that we produce.
Yeah. I think people feel like she's, out of all of them, she's remained relatively cool as well.
Yeah, I definitely think she's like the least bit of a sellout, and she doesn't seem to be as much of a propagandist as your typical US pop star now. She's not
certainly writes some stuff that's quite dark.
Yeah, like
quite difficult, right?
Like chemtrails over the country club, and some pretty far out stuff. So
yeah,
maybe she really knows what's going on, but who knows? But it seems that way. It seems she's definitely more genuine than a lot of these people that you can tell have like 9 or 10 people writing their one song for them.
Correct. Yeah, and she seems to want to work with whoever she wants to work with as well, which is nice.
Yeah, but Casey Musgraves I love as well. I mean, Brian Wilson had her on his 2015 solo record when he kind of came back and did a record, and she was great, man. And just really seemed like I saw her talking about the process, and she just really seemed appreciative of people that are perfectionists, and that's not very common. Like a lot of people are, especially in this industry, their egos are just ridiculous, and they're egomaniacal. So if let's say you have a guest guitarist or musician over that's really good, and then you want them to do more than 10 takes, they may get fed up with it. But that's not very professional as far as I'm concerned. You should, if you're working on a project, you should do everything the producer or the creator of the project wants, until that person's happy,
Yeah.
And that's the way our mixer views, our process and everything. And that's really helpful because sometimes we're absolutely relentless about it.
You're absolutely right there. I'd never really considered that point in any great detail, but you're absolutely right that we don't see as often these days that guest performance that completely lifts and changes a piece like we used to, where you go, oh, that's Eddie Van Halen on that. Do you know what I mean? Where you used to go, well, you know exactly who's done that,
right?
And what what they were doing there, and you could say, well, nobody else could have done that. Nobody else could have done that on that piece.
Right. It's their music, even if it's different,
Yeah. It's almost like, people are paid just to turn up and do what a session musician could have done, as opposed to turn up and put your piece of brilliance into this and completely transform it.
Right.
Which is, that's the main reason you would pay someone to do that, or decide to have someone on a track, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. Is like, there for a while, Jeremy and I we really just that's my partner. Pearl Poet's just me and one other dude, so it's just two of us that do everything. But he and I thought for a while, well, we can sing and we can make it happen, but maybe we should get some, like a soul singer in, like a female vocalist. Maybe we should get just the best, so we have the best of everything, And we tried it, and it just kind of like, people are not as reliable as they used to be. So people are in this day and age are definitely, even in the professional realm, which would which blows my mind. Like, I have friends that are in the corporate world that make, 6 figures here in the US, which is good. I mean, not really based on inflation now, but typically is good money. And, they're having a hard time getting, people that make that kind of money to come in and do hard work. So it's like, in music, a lot of people say a lot of things and make a lot of commitments, but it's really hard to find reliable people. That's one of the reasons why we've decided to keep this thing a duo. I mean, we've thought, you know, if we're going to do live drums and kick it up a notch, we'll just sort of have a hired gun, you know, that way it's only our two egos, which are plenty big enough. Trust me.
Yeah.
So that's really helped a lot. But it's funny that you brought up this whole issue of like, you know, guest vocalists. And I know it sort of came from like talking about would I have someone, you know, famous do my work. And I absolutely would. I mean, I think that's a dream. I think that's one of the reasons Bob Dylan got so big was, you know, selling music to the Byrds and, you know, to other artists, you know, over the years, and being like a songwriter, you know, selling to Jimi Hendrix, you know, for all along the Watchtower, which is arguably better than Bob Dylan's version. I mean, I love Bob Dylan's version, but anyway, so it's funny you brought that up because our next track is actually featuring a local artist here where I live now in St. Augustine, Florida, and his name is Phoenix Brown, and he's like a soul singer. He's part Jamaican. So we were like, let's get him. I had like this synth riff that I came up with, and it was really psychedelic, and I was like, it almost has a bit of like a Motown flair too, just like the key that it's in. And I was like, so let's try to do like a futuristic, like maybe if like Stevie Wonder or Marvin Gaye were, you know, in their 30s now making music, what it would sound like. And we got him over and
like a Planet Funk type thing, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But it's definitely, you can tell it's us. It's our music, you can tell, but his vocals just, it adds so much more soul. You know, it's real different, but it still sounds like Pearl Poet. That's the funny thing, you know, it still sounds like us, even though it's clearly a different singer. It's like, oh, they just have another guy singing in their band. It's kind of what it sounds like, you know, as opposed to if I wrote a song for Lana Del Rey, you know, that would probably still sound like my music, but you know, someone of that caliber would, you know, definitely make it their own. But this sort of just meshed so well with what we were already doing. It just became like a natural thing. But he definitely took it to the next level. I mean, I think he sings probably better than Jeremy and I probably.
Nice.
Yeah.
We look forward to that. When's that coming out?
I think January 31st.
Cool.
I'm still kind of, we're about to drop the music video for the one we just put out, The Lost Future. So we're still kind of crunching and all the stuff for that. Get like, we just got like a few playlists on that, so that's good. So we're still got a bit of promotion on that one before we move on to the next one, you know, but possibly January 31st. I feel like you got to put out a new, you know, to keep momentum going, you know, to keep, and it's terrible that artists have to think about all this stuff now. But, you know, to keep the engagement, you really have to put out a new song and a whole slew of content every 4 to 6 weeks. You have to. Yeah. Now, you know,
it's good. It's good for muscle building.
It is. I mean, it costs a lot of money, and it's hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of time. You know, especially like we do our own music videos, and it involves a lot of work. So
yeah. Well, thank you for doing it, sir, and thank you for coming and talking to me today. It's very much appreciated. So thank you so much for that.
Awesome. Thanks for having me,
folks. Do go and check out Pearl Poet. We'll put links in when bits of this go out over the next few days, and so do go and check out the music. And you know, who knows, in a month or two, we may see Lana Del Rey or Casey Musgraves or Rick Steele or somebody else come forward and be part of the Pearl Poet journey. And if you'd like to see them come to your country, wherever it is you are, do let them know. You know, if enough people say it, it might happen. You never know. It can happen. And certainly if you all send you know, $20 bills in the post, then it definitely would happen. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Until next time, this has been My Music. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation with Carl from Pearl Poet. We will be back soon with more of the same. Until then, look after yourselves and keep listening to more new music.